esteemed presenters, invited guests, and all participants joining us from across the country and beyond. It is my pleasure to welcome you to this month's edition of the PAN webinar series, and our last for 2025. You know how they say, save the best for the last. Today's session, titled Overview of Pharmacovigilance and Reporting of Adverse Drug Reactions and Adverse Events Following Immunization using the MEDSAFETY app, holds immense importance for all of us working to safeguard the health and well-being of children in Nigeria. This webinar is a product of a valued collaboration with the National Agency for Food and Drug Administration and Control, NAFDAC, and the PAN Collaboration Committee. Kudos to our efficient moderator, Dr. Thekla Ezonu, who chairs that committee. We deeply appreciate NAFDAC's continuing commitment to strengthening medication safety and enhancing systems for monitoring adverse drug reactions and adverse events following immunization. As pediatricians and child health practitioners, we stand at the front lines where medicines, vaccines, and other therapies interface directly with vulnerable populations. It is therefore our responsibility not only to provide care, but also to ensure that safety signals are recognized early, reported promptly, and used to guide better decision-making. The MEDSAFETY app represents an important step forward in simplifying and strengthening ADR and AEFI reporting across Nigeria. Some of our members have received training on the app in the workshops conducted by NAFDAC. Today, however, the webinar gives opportunity to a greater number of our members to be equipped with the practical knowledge needed to incorporate this tool into daily clinical practice, ultimately improving outcomes for our patients. We have an excellent team on ground in the persons of Dr. Uchenna Elemua and Farm Yvonne Ikide from NAFDAC, and our own Dr. Uzomaka Moneke from PAN, who will be sharing expertise with us, sharing experiences, while the session will be moderated by Chair of PAN Collaboration Committee, Dr. Thekla Ezonu, who has done a great job of making this maiden collaboration webinar with NAFDAC take place. Thank you very much, Dr. Ezonu. On behalf of the Pediatric Association of Nigeria, I hereby declare this webinar open. I thank you all for coming, and I wish us all a productive and impactful session. I will now hand over to Dr. Ezonu, who will thereafter moderate the session. So over to you, Thekla.
Thank you so much, Madam President. Good afternoon, distinguished ladies and gentlemen who have called in to join this very special edition of PAN webinar. Today's session will bring together experts who will deepen our understanding of pharmacovigilance and highlight practical reporting pathways, especially through NAFDAC. And it's going to help us, and we're going to discuss how to integrate our ADR reporting system seamlessly into our routine pediatric care. So I sincerely appreciate your time and commitment. As long as you're here, that means you are committed to this course. So without wasting more time, let's talk about a few housekeeping announcements, please. This webinar is being streamed via Zoom, courtesy of iEcho. And then, please, I plead that we keep our microphones muted so that we can hear the speakers. Type your questions on the chat box at any time. Then your questions will be taken at the end of all the presentations. We have limited time. This webinar will not last more than an hour, I guess. So please, I welcome you all. And then I'm going to hand over to the first speaker, but I'm going to introduce her briefly. Our first speaker today is Dr. Uchenna Elemowa. She is speaking from the NAFDAC desk. She's the Director of Pharmacovigilance at Nigeria at NAFDAC, for short. In her role, she oversees the implementation of national pharmacovigilance policy, coordinating medicine safety activities in Nigeria. She obtained her PhD in clinical pharmacotherapy from the University of Benin, and she earned a Bachelor of Pharmacy from the University of Jos. She holds a master's degree in clinical pharmacy and biopharmacy and a master's in industrial labor and relations. She's a fellow of the West African Postgraduate College of Pharmacists. She, under her leadership, has strengthened national systems for monitoring adverse drug reactions and adverse events following immunization. So you can see where she's coming from and what she can actually do. She is the chairperson, the expert working group on clinical trial, pharmacovigilance, and medicine safety for the ECOWAS Medicine Regulatory Harmonization Program from 2016 to 2022. And she is the current chairperson for the EWG on pharmacovigilance and safety monitoring from 2023 to date. So without spending a lot more time, please join me to welcome this very erudite scholar. She'll be talking to us about pharmacovigilance and its overview. I welcome you, Dr. Elemowa. Over to you, please.
Thank you so much for your kind words and for a beautiful introduction. So you are all welcome to this webinar organized by the Paediatric Association of Nigeria, collaborating with NAFDAC. So my work is very simple. I'm going to be speaking on the overview of pharmacovigilance and reporting of adverse drug reactions and adverse events following immunization. So next slide. So by way of this introduction, and next slide, please. By way of this presentation, we'll be looking at introduction of pharmacovigilance and drug safety and the historical background and key milestones in pharmacovigilance, and what the ethical considerations and issues of confidentiality in pharmacovigilance is all about, and the role of the regulatory authorities in pharmacovigilance. Thank you. So next slide. Looking at, and also participants will be able to familiarize with the reporting tools and enable them acquire practical working knowledge of these tools for reporting of adverse drug reactions and adverse event following immunizations. And when they understand these tools, they'll be able to report. So by way of starting this presentation, I'll be looking at what pharmacovigilance is by definition by WHO. We can see that according to WHO, pharmacovigilance is the science and activities relating to 4 key action words: detection, assessment, understanding, and prevention of adverse drug reactions or other drug-related problems, such as abuse, misuse, medication errors, lack of efficacy, and counterfeits. So what does this mean by understanding? What it simply means is that when a patient is given a medical treatment and there is an issuance of medicines or vaccines, the patient safety is very, very, very key. Pharmacovigilance is about monitoring safety of medicines or vaccines that we use. And when you talk about detection, that is the first principle. If there is an adverse drug reaction, at the point of issuing the drug or the vaccines, the patients will be guided, counseled that by peradventure they experience any negative reactions while they are taking that drugs, that they should do well to report back to the healthcare provider who gave them that treatment. So the detection part is the first point of safety monitoring. And once that is detected and documented, because we all understand that anything that has been detected but not documented has not happened. So the starting point starts with detection and documentation, because when you detect it and you do not document it, it still equals to 0. So it is that report that the healthcare provider or the patient has made will be the starting point of pharmacovigilance. And this will now lead to an assessment to know whether the drug or the vaccine is actually implicated in whatever adverse event that is reported. And once this assessment is done, it provides an understanding of whether or the predisposing risk factors associated with that use of medicines. And that understanding will further provide more further information on the prevention of its occurrence in future. So detection, assessment, understanding, and prevention are the key components of safety monitoring of medicines. And if we do not do this, that means whatever we are doing in pharmacovigilance cannot be assured. So in Nigeria, the scope of PV in Nigeria covers drugs, it covers medical devices, vaccines, cosmetics, chemicals, and herbals. So it becomes very important that any adverse event that has resulted from the use of these products has to be reported. And once it is reported, using the already defined tools, then it helps documentation to be done completely. So what is the history of pharmacovigilance and what are the key milestones? The pharmacovigilance system started way back in 1957. We all know the issue of the thalidomide saga, where pregnant women who were having morning sickness were given thalidomide. Wow. And this thalidomide was used for early morning sickness. And it was a wonder medicine. It was a wonder medicine in those years. But unfortunately, the real implication of use of this medicine was not known at that point in time. And this made it very difficult for people to actually understand the safety implications of thalidomide. Wow. So many women from all over the world, apart from the United States, where they all took this thalidomide. 10 years post-usage, we started seeing issue of phocomelic babies born without hands, limbs, and it became an international embarrassment. And this led World Health Assembly to call a meeting of all countries that are signatory to that. And it was at that point that they started the establishment of the global pharmacovigilance system housed in WHO. Now, countries were asked to go back to their different countries and begin to develop a system for pharmacovigilance so that we will have a global information about what medicines cause. And Nigeria, fortunately, started our journey in 2004, where we became the 74th member country of the WHO Global Program on Pharmacovigilance. So many countries have joined this program, and the reason for this global body is such that we know that medicines do not have boundaries, and safety information generated from one country can also add up to what information other countries get, and this gives us a true picture of what medicines are causing globally. Issues of signals can easily be identified in those global database. So these were the kinds of children that were given birth within the 1956 and 1962 when the thalidomide was being used. Next slide. So Nigeria, we started our journey as a member in 2004, just like I have said, and we're the 74th member country. The National Pharmacovigilance Center is established and it is housed under NAFDAC. One will wonder, why is the center housed under NAFDAC? Because NAFDAC has a mandate for safety, quality, and efficacy of medicines and vaccines. So it is common sense that the National Pharmacovigilance Center will be housed in NAFDAC so that safety data generated can feed into the overall management and evidence-based decision made by the regulator, which is NAFDAC. MPC, the National Pharmacovigilance Center, is now the reporting hub And all adverse events, adverse drug reactions, adverse event following immunizations, even the current adverse events from the use of medical devices are now being housed in the National Pharmacovigilance Database, which is the VigiFlow. It is through the VigiFlow that we are able to transmit the Nigerian data to the WHO global data, which is called the VigiBase. Next slide. So, what is the ethical consideration and the confidentiality in pharmacovigilance? People will begin to wonder, okay, if we contribute that, how sure are we that patient data is secured? In the ethical considerations to look into now is that patient autonomy and informed consent. It is the right of every patient to make informed decision about their care without coercion or manipulation. So even when you're doing an active surveillance for pharmacovigilance, maybe when you have to recruit patients to monitor them in-depthly, informed consent is a critical component of that activity. Confidentiality and privacy, the obligation to protect patient information from unauthorized access. This enables the healthcare worker to gain the trust of the patient. Whatever data we collect through our ADR reporting forms or the ADR electronic platforms are confidential. Before we can use that data for publication or otherwise, or whatever regulatory, there has to be a de-identifier for all the patients. We do not publish those with their names or anything that will identify them. And also transparency and accountability, the practice of being open and clear about healthcare processes, as well as owning up to errors when they occur. No shifting of blames or buck passing. Pharmacovigilance is a transparent system. If there are issues concerning medication use, maybe they are not working right for our patients, transparency is very, very, very key in doing whatever we're doing. Remember that in pharmacovigilance, it is not a system for punishing people who report ADRs, but rather it is a system that is very transparent and very accountable. So that once an adverse drug reaction happens, we need to identify the predisposing risk factors associated with that. Learn all the necessary things that we need to learn about the patient characteristics, the drug characteristics, and other predisposing risk factors. Remember, in our definition, we said we will assess, and whatever assessment that comes out to show us whether the event or adverse drug reaction is related to the implicated medicine or otherwise, helps us to understand whatever that has happened, to be able to prevent the future occurrences. So transparency and accountability in pharmacovigilance is a very key ethical consideration. Then you talk about equity and fairness, ensuring fair access to healthcare services for all individuals. All patients should be treated with dignity, irrespective of social or economic status. And the need for continuous monitoring and improvement is the bedrock of pharmacovigilance. Because remember, in our system in Nigeria, for example, most of the medicines that we use and vaccines are mostly imported. And most of the clinical trials were not done within our own population. So the need for continuous monitoring and reporting and improvement in drug use activities is very, very, very key. Evaluation of ongoing efforts to enhance healthcare quality and safety. Conscious effort to improve quality of care at every point is very, very, very critical, because those information that we get helps us take informed regulatory decisions whether a particular drug or vaccine should continue to be used in Nigeria. And pharmacovigilance, when you look at it overall, it evaluates benefits and risk. For every treatment process, the benefit must always outweigh the risk. Where situations where risk will outweigh the benefit, it now means that that product has to be removed from the market. Because for a patient that is sick in the hospital, that is sick and comes to the hospital, expects to be treated and gain benefit from every treatment process. So pharmacovigilance weighs the benefit risk ratio, but ensures that the benefit of every treatment process must outweigh the risk. Next slide.
Sorry, please. So you have about 3 minutes, please.
Okay. So when you talk about our mandates, we all know the ADCAP N1 laws ensures that NAFDAC is mandated, is mandated to protect and protect every individual. Next slide. And what is the mandate about? Our legal framework is to ensure that all the products that we regulate their manufacture, importation, exportation, distribution, advertisement, sale, and use of drugs. The scope we have said before, drugs, herbal medicines, vaccines, cosmetics, and all those things. And the goal of the National Pharmacovigilance Policy is to provide a strategic framework for the entrenchment of pharmacovigilance in the healthcare system and to ensure that the overall safety in the use of medicines. Next slide. So we have the PV regulations and guidelines for the marketing authorization holders. This has been gazetted. They are mandated to put a system in is to monitor their products in the market and report back to the regulator. Next slide. Next slide. So the structure of PV in Nigeria is such that it's decentralized. We have the national center that coordinates. Then we decentralize to the zonal pharmacovigilance centers housed in 6 tertiary hospitals across the 6 geopolitical zones. And PV interacts with, we have NAFDAC offices in all the zone and in all the states of the Federation. So in all those states, we have PV focal persons that are responsible for carrying out pharmacovigilance functions. We also interact with public healthcare programs, the marketing authorization holders, different organizations like how we collaborating with PANS. We collaborate with different patient and consumer groups and tertiary, secondary, and primary health facilities. So pharmacovigilance is an all-inclusive structure in Nigeria where everybody is responsible for safety monitoring and reporting. Next slide. Next slide. This is the list of the 6 geopolitical zones where we have our PV zonal pharmacovigilance centers and their coordinators and their numbers so that people can look at it. The presentation can be circulated. Next slide. So in summary, adverse events of medicines and vaccines occur in the hands of the most even skillful clinicians and contribute greatly to morbidity and mortality. Improvements in medicine regulation arose from historical therapeutic adverse events, such as the thalidomide tragedy, and drug safety and pharmacovigilance provide the platform for guaranteeing safety of the patient and enhancing public health. So pharmacovigilance is all about everybody's business. What do we need to pay vigilance, and patient safety must be at the center of every health professional, healthcare worker, because where you do not do that, that means your patients will suffer. So the national regulatory authorities like NAFDAC collect and analyze all the adverse reactions and adverse events collected from the healthcare workers, the patients, and everybody that is responsible for the pharmacovigilance. And the results of whatever we get out of the assessment of this is communicated as safety information to all healthcare professionals and the public. And this will continuously enhance the safety use of those medicines in Nigeria. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Dr. Elemugwa. That was a very good, beautiful presentation. Just that time did not permit us to go as far as you would have loved to go. I want to remind us that your questions will be attended to if you place them on the chat box. So without wasting more time, please, I'll call on the second speaker. She is pharmacist Yvonne Iyadu Ikide. She is a medicine safety advocate and a pharmacist with 16 years of professional experience in medical products regulation. And she currently works at Pharmacovigilance Directorate, NAFDAC headquarters, Nigeria, as an assistant director. So her experience includes desk officer for review of product information, desk officer for writing and disseminating a quarterly pharmacovigilance newsletter, desk officer for pediatric pharmacovigilance, desk officer for maternal and child health pharmacovigilance. And she's the editor of the NAFDAC Registered Medical Products Database, that is the Green Book. She has her qualifications as bachelor's degree in pharmacy in University of Jos, Master of Science degree with distinction in regulatory science from the University of Maryland, Baltimore. Please, welcome specially pharmacist Yvonne Ikide. You're welcome, ma. Over to you.
Thank you very much, Dr. Tekla Ezeonu. Good afternoon, all.
Good afternoon.
I am Yvonne Ikide, and I'm happy to present on the MEDSAFETY app, which is a mobile app for reporting adverse events, like we'll see. This session is going to take us through a practical workshop on using the MEDSAFETY app to report adverse drug reactions, that's ADRs, and AEFIs, the adverse events following immunization. We will also have a case study at the end, as well as questions and answers. So the MEDSAFETY app is all about putting safety of medicines in your hands, because the general public can report to the MEDSAFETY app. Healthcare professionals can also report. So it puts the safety of medicines in our hands, because each one of us can participate in sharing this information when someone experiences an adverse event. What can we do with the MEDSAFETY app? We can report AEFIs, ADRs, and side effects. Like we know, most medications have known side effects, and these are part of the pill, the product information leaflet we find in the medicine package. And even when people experience a side effect, it's good to report, because sometimes we have increased frequencies or duration or severities of these side effects, which needs to be monitored over time. The MEDSAFETY app can track drug-related safety information. You can also use it to build a watch list of medications you're interested in. For instance, if you want to see the adverse events that have been reported relating to 2 medications, for instance, glucophage and amlodipine, you could input those 2 medications in your MEDSAFETY app so that you can monitor. It can also be used to view the number of reports that have been submitted on the WHO database of suspected ADRs. Our target is everyone: the healthcare professionals, healthcare providers, market authorization holders, the public health programs, and the general public, of course. In Nigeria, English is our lingua franca, so we can deploy the MEDSAFETY app in English language here. In other countries, other languages are applicable, but here we use English. And it has interesting features, which include that you can start a report and continue it later. By saving it, instead of pressing submit, you can revisit a report, because sometimes you don't have all the details you need. You need to phone the patient to get more information, or whatever the case. So this is an advantage of the MEDSAFETY app. And it also has a feature, like we'll see later, that you can go back and view all the reports you sent in the past. That's your sent reports box, and so on. It's a very user-friendly app, like we will see. Next slide, please. So we are using the MEDSAFETY app to report adverse drug reactions and AEFIs or side effects. And of course, this is electronic reporting, and it's user-friendly. It will not submit the report, even if you click submit, if you have not filled all the relevant details. So it will take you back to and highlight areas where you did not fill completely. And so it enhances completeness of reports received. There is a news section, like we'll see at the bottom of the MEDSAFETY app. If you tap news, you get to see news items from the NAFDAC website. For instance, we have public alerts disseminated on our website, and I'm sure that it will be of interest to the pediatric. These news items are not only on medical products. We've had one on cowbell this year. There was a fake cowbell milk, and the slogan on the fake version says, "Our milk, our milk," whereas the genuine product goes, "Our creamy goodness." So if you just tap the news item, you can see all the recent public alerts that have been published on the NAFDAC website. So like you can see, it's not only used for reporting adverse events, it has other interesting features that I know we would like to explore. Next slide. And it can enable you browse other adverse drug reaction reports, that suspect adverse drug reaction reports that have been submitted. And you can view items like reactions, the age of the patients involved, and the gender. What are the advantages of this app? It's very convenient. Like I said, you can save a report that has not been completed for a later time. You can actually make a report while you're offline, when your data is not available. And then whenever you switch on your data, this report will actually be sent. So it's very user-friendly, and it has reduced the incidence of incomplete reports, because when we had only the yellow forms, that's the paper-based reporting, sometimes we get many reports with missing information. For instance, the reporter doesn't put his details, no email of reporter, no phone number of reporter. So who do we contact when we need to fill in the gaps that are on that report? But then with the MEDSAFETY app, you cannot submit a report that is incomplete. All the mandatory fields will have to be filled before you can submit. So we have a hands-on demonstration now. If you have an iPhone or an Android phone, please go to the Play Store, the Google Play Store for the Android phone, or the iOS store for the Med with the space safety, and you'll see the MEDSAFETY icon, and then tap to install. Download it and install it, and make sure that you choose Nigeria, because it's going to pull down a menu with different countries, and you will see the Nigerian flag, green, white, green. Make sure you select that Nigeria logo, and it will ask you to generate your password. Your password has to be at least 8 characters long, and it should be a mixed password, at least 1 special character and at least 1 number, and of course letters too. So please go ahead and download the MEDSAFETY app. Don't procrastinate. Don't say you do it later. It just takes 1 or 2 minutes. And then after you download it, you can open it and see the different options at the bottom of the MEDSAFETY app, like the news item I talked about. Yeah, so this is what you will see. You're going to see email and password. And that means you have to input your active email, an email that is working now, and choose a password that is 8 characters long. Make sure your password has a number, and
I'm still tearing her. I don't know.
a special character, like one. So choose your password, Nigeria. So when you open the app, okay. Can you hear me now?
Yes,
Yeah, we can
can.
hear you.
Okay.
We can hear you.
So, okay, thank you. So can you see the news items for those that have downloaded? At the bottom, you can see news, products, and so many other things. So if you tap news, you're going to see a list of public alerts. And you have to tap the one you're interested in. Once you tap it, it will open up and you see the details of that product alert. So a public alert is just warning the general public about what to watch out for. Maybe there's a specific batch of a product that was found to be fake or substandard, and so on. So now, if you want to make a report, you have to tap report. So at the bottom of your app, there's an icon, report, the second to the last icon. So you have to tap report when you want to make a report. And we're talking about reporting adverse drug reaction or AEFI. That's adverse event following immunization. So you have to choose the correct one. And during the pandemic, we also did a lot of reporting of COVID-19 vaccine-related AEFIs. So that one is an option. So these are the sent reports in someone's app. So if you've sent 20 reports in the last 2 months, you can go to your phone and revisit them, because sometimes you have updated information or you just want to review the case. So it's very useful to healthcare professionals, because when they do drug therapy review meetings, sometimes they visit these cases, and the aim is to prevent these adverse events. So we need to assess them and prevent them, so that our patients are safe. And so I said report is the second to the last icon at the bottom of your app. So when you tap report, it will ask you for your details, what best describes you. And there's a pull down menu, so it's very easy to use. Your name, if you used your password to log in, it will bring out your name automatically. You don't have to type your name because the app recognizes you. But if you forgot your password and you just want to report as anonymous, because there's an option if you lost your password, it will expect you to type in your name because it doesn't know you. So now we're talking about the suspect medicine details. You have to add, and there's a list of medication there. You even see Nigerian brand names. So don't worry if you don't have the generic name. If it's the trade name you have, glucophage, put it in. If it's the generic name, you will still find what you're looking for. And then of course, some patients are on more than one medication. So you can't assume that you're sure that the suspect concomitant medications, and that as many concomitant medications as you have. And then for each medicine you report, you need to give the reason. For instance, augmentin, what was the reason? But then this is not a mandatory field. The name of the medicine is mandatory, but if you don't know the reason, it will still submit the report. The dose, the batch number, they are useful if you have them, but if you don't have them, you can still proceed. So we expect and we encourage reporters to give us as much information as they have, because sometimes reactions are batch related, sometimes, not all the time. So we're talking about reaction details now. What is the reaction? Is it swelling of the limbs or whatever? And there is a MEDRA dictionary there that will enable you make a very selective, a very specific selection, because we have all kinds of headache. For instance, mild, moderate headache, frontal headache. So for each term, for each reaction, that dictionary, when you tap the yellow section, will help you select as close as possible to what you want to report. And did the reaction lead to death? It's very important to let us know, because when a reaction leads, please, previous slide, when a reaction leads to death or disability, or is life-threatening, or it prolongs hospitalization, that's the patient was already on admission and the adverse event made the patient stay even longer, or it caused the patient to be hospitalized, that is a serious adverse drug reaction. And we always treat them with more attention, because those can cause death. So now you have to add the symptoms, like I said, and it's a compulsory field. So if you don't have anything to report, if there's no reaction, then you won't be able to submit the reports. And if you have more than one reaction, the form will enable you to add. So that yellow button, add, even if you have as many as 6 reactions. Patient complaint of headache, swelling of the feet, numbness of the fingers, dizziness, as many. And it's good to give as much information as you have. And so the date is very, very critical, because when we do causality assessment of these adverse events, plausibility has to be established. And that, I mean, the time plausibility. Was the reaction, did the reaction occur after medical product administration? If it's a yes, then we can go on to suspect the medical product. But if you don't know when the reaction started, then already this report may not be accessible. So the date the reaction started and the date the drug started is very important and critical for a complete report. And the medical history, of course, you could let us know, is this a diabetic? he has been a diabetic in the last 12 years, and he's on so medication. And sometimes the disease symptoms confuse the judgment. So we want to rule out the disease symptoms and other adverse events due to concomitant medicines, different from an adverse event being caused by the suspect medicine. So you see, causality assessment is a very scientific exercise, and we consult official Compedia like Martindale, the British Medical Formulary, the MDEX, which is African-based, and so on, before we arrive at a judgment. And this judgment has different strengths depending on the evidence we have. So submitting your report, that's the last stage. And as I said, is user-friendly. It will bring you to this point after you've filled all the important and mandatory sections. So if you say yes, you go ahead and submit. But if you're not ready to submit, you're still awaiting more information, you can click on no, and it will save your progress for a later date. Next slide. So we have an acknowledgement that you receive in your email. So it will be an evidence that you actually reported this adverse event, because reporting adverse events due to medical products is a core responsibility of every healthcare professional. And I'm sure that the time will come when facilities will ask their staff, their nurses, their pharmacists, their physicians, did you report this patient reacted in such a way? Did you make a report? So this is the sent reports folder on your app, and you can see that you can look at the evidence of all the reports you made in the past, and you can tap on any one of interest to review it. All the details will be available for that.
Yeah, so, 3 minutes, please.
Yes. So now we're talking about the paper-based reporting. And apart from using the MEDSAFETY app, on our website, there is a reporting link. You can just tap the link and you get a reporting form, because some people say they don't have enough space on their phone. They had to uninstall the app. So this is a repetition of what we just did, but it looks more like the paper-based. So you fill in the patient age, you fill in the mandatory field, of course, patient details, reaction details, medicine details, and reporter details, very important. So the dates, relevant dates are there, dates drug started and dates drug stopped, if you know. Then the date reaction started, which is very critical, and did it stop? Did the reaction stop or reduce when the drug was withdrawn? If you have those details, they are extras. Please go ahead. And so this is on concomitant medicines. So this is how the paper-based yellow form looks. And it is more cumbersome because when you fill a paper-based form, you have to find a way to submit it to a NAFDAC office in any of the state offices or in the headquarters at Abuja. So that makes the timeline longer of the report getting to us at the National Pharmacovigilance Center. So that's where the reporter puts in his name and address, at least email and phone number, email or phone number. So next slide, we're rounding up. If you have laboratory tests that support it, your suspicion, please let us know, and so on and so forth. And of course, if the patient is pregnant or breastfeeding, it's important information to tick, or allergies that you're aware of, or even a smoking patient or an alcoholic. Next slide, please. And that's the yellow form. That's what it looks like. It's just a one page. Next slide. So that's the end of this presentation. And the reporting link will be pasted in the chat box. Please save it in your emails so that if you want to share with your colleagues, or if your MEDSAFETY app is not functioning well, please use the reporting link also, so that by all means, you safeguard the health of Nigerians by enabling us to monitor the use of medications and the benefit risk profiles. Thank you very much.
Wow. Thank you very much, Pharmacist Ikide, for the beautiful presentation. I wish we had more time for practicals, but we are limited. Thank you very much. I want to remind us to please put in your questions on the chat box. We'll now call our dear own Dr. Uzamaka Moneke Vivian. She's going to be giving us some practical experiences. She's a professor of pediatrics working as a pediatric nephrologist with the College of Medical Sciences, University of Nigeria, Itukozala campus, Enugu. She has also worked and trained both undergrad medical students and postgrad doctors outside Nigeria, especially in Gambia and very recently in Hamburg, Germany. She's a graduate of the University of Calabar Medical School and a fellow of the National Postgraduate Medical College. She has won a number of awards, including the 2024 African Award for Whistleblowing from the Blueprint for Free Speech International, an offshoot of the Transparency International Group. This she received on account of the role she played during the drug-induced acute kidney injury crisis, which occurred in Gambia and Indonesia 2022-2023. Now you understand why she's here. She has over 60 scientific publications listed in ResearchGate, Google Scholar Citations, and Mendeley, respectively. She has served in various professional and religious committees and in various capacities, including serving as the president of the Medical Women's Association of Nigeria, Ebonyi State Chapter, 2009-2011. And she's happily married with 3 adult children who are professionals. Please join me and welcome our erudite scholar, Dr. Uzamaka Moneke. Ma, over to you. Hello, are we together? Am I being heard?
Yes, you are.
Okay, so Dr. Moneke.
I'm going to talk about my experience concerning adverse drug reaction that we experienced in the Gambia. And by way of introduction, there are certain questions or certain things I would have loved to talk about, but because of time, I may have to go straight on to the meat of the occasion. So can we just skip on until the terminologies, AKI. Can you just next slide? Continues. Next slide. Next slide. Next slide. Okay. So by way of introduction, there are certain terminologies we may have to look at. One of these is acute kidney injury, that's AKI, and the other one is multiple organ dysfunction syndrome. And what are they? In terms of AKI, it's a rapid decline in glomerular filtration rate that leads to accumulation of waste, such as BUN and creatinine, and of course, inability of the kidneys to maintain and sustain fluid and electrolyte hemostasis. It was also further defined by Kidigo in 2012, all based on changes on the serum creatinine levels and urine output. In terms of multiple organ dysfunction syndrome, is defined as a clinical syndrome characterized by development of progressive and potentially reversible physiologic dysfunction, often induced by a variety of acute insults and occurs in 2 or more organs or organ system. Now, down to Gambia. Let's look at an overview of the Gambia. Gambia, it is capital at Banjul, is one of the smallest countries in the West African region, surrounded all around by Senegal, apart from the West Coast, where it's surrounded by the Atlantic Ocean. Actually, by 2023, the population is estimated to be around 2.9 million people. So you can imagine how small the place is. And the major ethnic groups include the Mandinkas, the Wolofs, the Fulas, the Jolas, the Sarawolas, and most of them are subsistence farmers with groundnut as their main cash crop. However, tourism is the country's major source of foreign exchange. There are 4 referral hospitals operated by the government, with just 1 tertiary hospital based in Banjul, which is the Edward Francis Small Teaching Hospital, which is a 540 bedded tertiary referral hospital, which was established by the British colonialists in 1853, then known as Royal Victoria Teaching Hospital, but renamed in 2013 to Edward Francis Small Teaching Hospital. So these are just pictures of the hospital, the accident emergency area, then the front part of the hospital, and of course the pediatric emergency unit in front, and of course inside, and the wards. So what happened? So the outbreak was first noted on the 7th of July, 2022. And after which an alert was sent out to the Ministry of Health. Initially, we were getting patients who were coming. There was an increase, a sudden surge in the number of patients presenting with a particular symptom. In other words, they were coming with inability to urinate. And the first impression was they were coming because of the new pediatric nephrologist that just came to the hospital. But when the numbers now increased, we had to quickly discard the notion and follow up as fast as possible. At that point in time, we made a working diagnosis of intrinsic AKI based on the knowledge of etiology and clinical features and of course lab findings of AKI. Again, we noticed there was coexisting involvement of other organs apart from the kidney. So we found out that the liver was involved, the lungs were involved, the brain, the pancreas were also involved, followed by the range lab results that we saw. And of course, the autopsy findings we were able to collect. So we now thought whatever was causing the renal shutdown was equally affecting all these other organs we talked about. Now, our first case was a 46-year-old boy who was admitted at the children emergency of the hospital on the 7th of July, 2022. Had a complaint of fever, vomiting for 4 days, and had accessed healthcare from nearby private hospital where he was commenced on a number of oral syrups. 2 days after commencing the syrups, the mother noticed that the napkins, the child was no longer making urine. So with fear, they were able to refer the child to us at the hospital. While we were still managing this case, 5 more came, 2 females and 3 males, and all of them were below the age of 5 weeks. And all of them came with a similar history of not making urine. And the funny thing about it was this came few days after ingesting some oral syrup. And this pattern continued until we had up to 66 patients. So if you look at the table, these are the history findings made. It came with some of them came with fever, even though as of the time they reported to us, only one of them came with significant fever. Others, the fever had gone down. Some came with vomiting, some were passing watery stool. But the good thing, or not really good, the funny thing about the watery stool, there was no history of bloody stool, no history of blood in the stool. And again, there was no history of any bleeding or petechiae. However, all 66 came with history of oliguria or anuria. And we found out that the mean duration of the oliguria anuria prior to presenting to us was 4 days plus or minus 3. And the duration of all the other complaints were between 24 hours and 18 days. Further, the drug history that we took further revealed that most of them, in fact, all of them had taken oral liquid medication provided by health facilities or bought from local pharmacies. But the funny thing was that the period between the time of ingestion of these liquid medications to the time of manifestation of the oliguria or anemia ranged between 1 to 6 days, with a mean of 2.9 plus or minus 2.6 days and a mode of 3 days. That made us start worrying. Now, when we took further history of the drugs, we found out that majority, about 41, had taken paracetamol alone or in combination. Again, a lot of them had taken promethazine either alone or combined with other drugs. 19 of these patients, the mothers or the caregivers were not able to remember the names of the drugs that were given or even the remnants of the drugs, including their packets. When we did a general examination on all these patients that came, in terms of consciousness levels, we noted that 29 were quite conscious on arrival, but eventually gradually went down. Then 12 on arrival were already unconscious, while the rest had various levels of altered sensory. 2 had several episodes of tonic-clonic convulsion that were difficult to control with anticonvulsants. Like I said before, only 1 person came with measurable fever. The hydration status was not too bad, just that 5 showed signs of dehydration, mostly mild, because it had received some form of rehydration therapy from their reference centers. But the worrying thing was that a lot of them, 25 of the patients, came in with varying degrees of severe respiratory distress. So these are some of the patients that we saw. Again, this was the youngest among them that we saw, about 2 months, and already started on peritoneal dialysis. So these are the residents that were with me when all these things were happening, and we're learning how to start a set of a peritoneal dialysis. And then these are some of the drugs that we suspected had problems. By the time the lab results were out, if you look on the board, you see that there are a lot of them that are in red. Like platelets, we found out that all the patients had thrombocytosis. The renal function tests were all deranged, and of course, the liver function tests were also deranged. By means of treatment, patients were commenced on the fields for maintenance and correction of insensible loss. Those who were in respiratory distress with SpO2, low SpO2 were commenced on intranasal oxygen, and of course, antibiotics were given where they were necessary. Those and then were able to commence peritoneal dialysis on 15, with cycles ranging between 2 to 30 before the patients died. 1 had hemodialysis, that's the bigger one. And then, because we were overwhelmed, we had to send out 7 to Senegal, who eventually died. Now, we were able to conduct some autopsies on the deceased patient. And I can just look at just the conclusion because there's no time. So conclusion for most of them showed acute tubular necrosis, severe fatty liver, moderate pulmonary and splenic congestion. While not keeping quiet, we still kept pushing for the drugs to undergo toxicology tests. But because of the country, they don't have such thing. they were forced to now call on WHO to help. So some of those drug samples they are taken to Ghana for for examination. So out of these 9 drug samples, 2 contain ethylene glycol, while 1 contained diethylene glycol. And because Ghana didn't have enough chemicals to quantify how much each of those ones contain, they were further sent to Switzerland and France, who now showed that the levels were quite intolerable to life, which means those children stood no chance to survive. So what was the outcome? We had a total of 66 of these patients, 63 died, including the 7 that were referred to Senate, giving us a fatality rate of 95.5%. Just to recover because they came from here, we started immediately on food and maternal dialysis. 1 went on discharge against medical advice. So what were the actions carried out when we noted this? We made efforts to get the ministry to suspend the use of oral drugs in these children, because by then we are starting suspecting that the cause of these deaths could be from the drugs they were taking. So our initial effort to get this ban was not complied with, because most of the stakeholders vehemently rejected it. But by the 16th of September, more than 2 months after this whole thing commenced, both paracetamol and promethazine were now banned. And we noted a significant reduction in the incidence of the AKI. But when this thing happened, then they had to now activate the surveillance units. And of course, most of the drugs, the indicated drugs, were now seized, confiscated by the medicine control agencies, while we're still waiting for the toxicology results to come out. And if you look at the chart, you can see that by September, when the second ban came, you can see the drop and eventually the fading off. So now, when we did this, we now thought, what could be causing this? We thought there could be that diethylene glycol and ethylene glycol would be involved. By then, the toxicology result had not come out. So we thought of diethylene glycol and ethylene glycol based on clinical presentations, the lab and autopsy findings. And again, from information we had about similar outbreaks from other countries, including Nigeria. And we all know what ethylene glycol is all about, and we know that it also affects the kidneys and other systems of the body. Looking at the toxicology and toxicokinetics of diethylene glycol, it is suggested that the minimum toxic dose is about 0.14 milligram per kg of body weight, or equivalent to 1 ml per kg in adults. So the smallest amount that is taken can actually cause death. However, in terms of absorption, the principal method of absorption is GIT. But it can also be absorbed through the skin when it's broken or damaged. And reaching peak blood concentration is within 30 to 120 minutes and is quickly metabolized by the liver enzyme. Now, in terms of clinical manifestation, symptoms of this poisoning usually occur in 3 characteristic phases. The first phase occurs between a few hours and 2 days post-ingestion of the impregnated drug. And the symptoms are usually gastrointestinal symptoms and early neurological symptoms. The second phase involves the respiratory, the cardiac, and of course, the renal system, often occurring between 1 to 3 days. If we remember the data we gave initially, remember we said the olguria commenced within 1 to 6 days with a mode of 3 days, so which also was compliant to what we noticed. And then the third and final phase is, of course, 5 to 10 days if the child is able to survive up to that period. And most of these symptoms are related to late neurological complications. In this case, there were factors that were strongly suggesting DEG as possible cause of death of these children. One, we noticed that almost all the children affected were 5 years and below, except one, the 7-year-old who took his sister's drug when he was sick. So that was why he was brought into the whole thing. But all the others were below 5 years of age. And then we also noticed that the interval between time of injection and clinical manifestation was between 1 to 6 days, with a mean of 2.9 days and a mode of 3 days. Also, the clinical cause of the clinical manifestation also pointed to DEG. There was the autopsy report and findings were equally pointing towards a chemical cause. Then, even before the toxicology result came out, we noticed a significant reduction and final resolution following ban on liquid medications for these children. And then, to round it up, by the time the toxicology results came out, showing us diethylene glycol and ethylene glycol in doses that were intolerable to life, we were able to say yes, the cause of these deaths was actually from DEG contamination. Yes, it was a very sad thing, but at least there were things that came out from this crisis. Positive fallouts from this crisis. Gambia was able to install and equip a new pediatric hemodialysis center. They were now able to build a new national test and drug testing lab, which was non-existent before this crisis. They were able to train surveillance officers in case definitions and reports. Again, they were able to institute a law case against the manufacturers of the implemented medications, and I'm aware that it's still ongoing. And of course, they were also able to insist on certification of drugs before importation into the country. And then from my own side, I was invited by the Indian Paediatric Association, who were also experiencing similar problems in their country. So by the time we discussed, we also found out it was the same drugs that were causing deaths in their children that period. So in conclusion, toxicological evidence strongly suggested that mortality was associated with ingestion of these contaminated liquid medications, which had resulted in multi-organ failure, which is presented as AKI, as acute kidney injury. So what are my recommendations here in terms of the future? It's important that low and middle income countries should get support, especially with quality control of medications, including having access to toxicology laboratories. And amongst us, the physicians and those who come in contact with patients, we must need to develop a high index of suspicion in cases with similar presentations coming from widespread regions. We also need to develop standard drug testing laboratories before drugs are dispensed into the market. Then, giving the exports of medications from manufacturers to many countries, it becomes very important that relevant authorities are alerted early to prevent such outbreaks from progressing to a pandemic. Thank you very much.
Wow, thank you so much. That was a very interesting one. Thank you, Dr. Moneke. Thank you to the audience for your rapt attention. I think it's now time for questions and answers. We have very limited time. So I had asked that questions are placed on the chat box so that our speakers will also view them. So let me go straight away to look at what we have on the chat box, including my own question. Yeah, the first question was, how can we report reactions from herbal medications? Some of them are not registered, I know. Some may be registered. Would NAFDAC receive reports from non-registered drugs? And can patients use the MEDSAFETY app to report directly to NAFDAC? So this is a question I'm sure will be for the NAFDAC speakers. Any of them would attempt a question. Another comment, or do we get the response before we go on? I think, let me just read through in case there are repeated questions. Toning and bleaching creams and soaps are readily available in supermarkets and shops in Nigeria. What's the NAFDAC stand on these products? Okay, another question is, you mentioned AEFI as being under pharmacovigilance, but the process of reporting of AEFI is incorporated into the vaccination program and different from the reporting of adverse drug reactions. I'm not sure I read it well. How do you reconcile these lines of reporting? Why is it that no feedback is given to those who report adverse drug reactions? The other question is, healthcare providers and consumers are advised to report. Oh, sorry, this must be a response. I think I'm done with the questions. So most of them are for our NAFDAC speakers, please. Dr.
Okay,
Lemoa,
thank you.
or
Yeah,
Pharmacist
thank
Yvonne?
you. Thank you so much for the questions. So starting with whether patients can report through MEDSAFETY app, yes, because it's an app that is open to anybody, be you a healthcare provider, be you a patient, as long as you know how to download the app from the Play Store if you're using Android, or iOS if you're using iPhone. And it is self-explanatory on how you record. 4 key information components is who is the patient that you're reporting on, what is the adverse drug reaction you're reporting on, what drugs did you take, and who is making that report. Once you're able to provide this for information requirement based on what Pharmacist Yvonne presented, and once you submit, the report gets into the national database, which is the VigiFlow. And we have experts that are looking at the database on a daily basis. So anybody can report. Then the information on AEFI, having parallel reporting structures for both drugs and vaccines. If you look at the MEDSAFETY app, you will see that the form for AEFI and for drugs are both integrated into the MEDSAFETY app. So if you are reporting on drugs, you will click the one on adverse drug reaction. If you're reporting on AEFI, you click the form on vaccine. All these forms are just the yellow form and the paper reporting form for the AEFI, for the vaccine people, because we understood that paper reporting can cause delays in transmission. So we use the MEDSAFETY app to provide the opportunity for both the electronic reporting for ADR and for AEFI. Suffice to say that the vaccine program and NAFDAC, we are working hand in hand in terms of safety monitoring of these vaccines. NAFDAC grants waivers to the National Primary Health Care, which is the vaccine agent, the agency responsible for everything on vaccines. Remember, NAFDAC is the one authorizing the importation and release of those vaccines to NPHCDA. It is the responsibility of NPHCDA to now feedback NAFDAC on any adverse event following immunization. So we are working hand in hand with the National Primary Health Care, because whatever vaccine safety information AEFI that is reported must get into the VigiFlow, which is the national database. And it is through this national database that the information goes globally to the WHO VigiBase. So that has been understood. We're working hand in hand with the National Primary Health Care, and everything they receive, whether reported directly through the MEDSAFETY app or otherwise, or through the line listing process, eventually gets into the national database, which is the VigiFlow. Then, which other question?
Somebody
The
else
one
about feedback.
issue of feedback. Issue of feedback. Remember, I don't know, we have a feedback mechanism where we look at the database, do a bulk analysis of and trends of reports already sent to the national database. And now that feedback comes in form of our quarterly newsletters. But the ones that are very critical, that are maybe serious ADRs or serious AEFIs, are investigated and feedback are given back to the states, working with the MPACDA on vaccines. Then on the NAFDAC point on drugs, when we see serious ADRs, we normally identify if there's need for investigation, we write back either to the zonal or to our state to do further investigation. Remember, immediately you submit this form through MEDSAFETY app, there is an immediate acknowledgement that your report has been received in the national database and is undergoing assessment. But we do not give individual feedback for every report that is received in the center, because for how many people will you give? So what we do is that we batch all the reports we receive from anyone that is of particular interest that will impact on the safety of a particular medication. We normally write a safety communication, which we circulate widely for people to know. So if it is a particular drug that we are seeing that the patterns are causing serious adverse drug reactions or otherwise, now an analysis is done on that and circulated through safety communications, which we distribute like their healthcare provider letters. We also put on our website, and we also give feedbacks to those hospitals where we have received that pattern of that trend of reporting. And another thing, the reports that we get from there after analysis helps us to develop educational materials in terms of integrating them into our training modules, so that when we are training healthcare providers, they become samples for case studies and otherwise, so that people will begin to understand what these drugs are actually causing, what are the predisposing risk factors, do we need to change or otherwise. So these are the different ways, but we do not give individual feedback to every reporter based on what is reported, except when it is a very serious adverse drug reaction. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Dr. Lemowa, for that. I don't know, there was a question on toning and bleaching creams.
Toning and bleaching creams. Obviously, we know, even in Nigeria, even with the drugs, we can see unscrupulous businessmen doing a lot with counterfeit and substandard medicines. So the watchword is that people must be careful about what they use. We have a whole directorate that is responsible for monitoring issues of cosmetics. You understand? And all the activities that is being carried out for cosmetics, there is a certain percentage of level of subactive ingredients that is required within cosmetics registration in Nigeria. And for those that have those kind of ingredients higher than the approved limits, we do not register them. But that is not to say that when you go into the market, you will not still see unscrupulous people providing cosmetics with high levels of mercury in them. For example, I think the minimum level that is allowable is it about some of I don't have it offhand, about 2% this, but you can see a lot of active ingredients that are very damaging to the skins and otherwise that people still use. But the watchword is, yes, NAFDAC will always work towards ensuring that any product that is not registered, including cosmetics, is not in the market. But this can only work if everybody joins hands, because NAFDAC cannot be in everywhere. Nigeria is about 200 and something population, 200 and something million in population, and the number of NAFDAC staff in Nigeria is about 2,000. How much can we do? We have put out regulations. We have done all the necessary things that needs to be done. The watchword is everybody has to be vigilant, and they have to be very, very careful about what they use. We have gone into the market to, I'm sure everybody heard about it, when we went into open markets where they are selling drugs. We saw quite a lot of things which we were able to mop out of the market and otherwise. So A lot is happening, but people need to be responsible in terms of what they buy and what they use. If you see cosmetics that are damaging to the skin, as an individual, you have a duty of care to yourself, not to buy those kind of damaging cosmetics. When people do not patronize them, the sellers will not be in business, and that will stop. So there is a duty of responsibility to all of us. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you. I can see your passion. All right, we have a question for Dr. Moneke. Regarding the two survivors, did they also have MODs, that is multiple organ dysfunction? It seems like only 2 of them had peritoneal dialysis. Was this due to cost or insufficient equipment? Were the results gotten from toxicology screen available prior to the death of the patients? This is the question for Dr. Moneke. Please, do you have an answer for that?
Yes, please. Thank you for the question. Let me start with the one you said, only 2 had peritoneal dialysis. Maybe you didn't look well. I told you 15 had peritoneal dialysis, had cycles between 2 and 30 cycles. Even at that, they still didn't make it. And then 1 had hemodialysis. And it will interest you to note that the 15 that had the dialysis, I was lucky as if I knew something was going to happen while I was going for this job. I bought a 15 peritoneal catheter with my own money and went there as if I was expecting that. So when I was almost running out, I requested for more. Efforts were made to procure them, but up to Senegal, nothing was done. So we now had to improvise. We had to use ordinary catheters, improvise to do, the procedure for the remaining ones. So it wasn't just 2 people that had PD. We had 15 of them who had.
Okay.
And then concerning the 2 survivors, it's interesting for you to know that the mothers of these 2 survivors, one was a teacher, the other one a nurse. So they were aware of what was happening. Unfortunately for them, just 1 teaspoon they gave to their children and noticed that they were not making urine as much as they were making before. That was what made them to bring the children to the hospital. And because of the information we had had, or what we have been faced with for the past month, we didn't want to waste time. Yes, we collected samples for all the tests, and like we expected, the results still came out, showing the range result for all the systems. But we're lucky, by the time we were able to do several cycles of peritoneal dialysis, and of course, because of just the quantity that the children took, we're able to get them out of danger. But the thing is, they're still under surveillance because we don't know the long-term effects of these drugs. So for now, they're alive, but we don't know what will happen in the next 5 years or so. So they're still under surveillance. Now,
thank you very much.
Concerning the toxicology result, it was a tough war getting that toxicology test done. Remember, it's a small country, poor, and they were really not, they were not sure what was happening. They were scared. You can imagine where you have less than 3 million people. Out of these 3 million people, about 40% are children. So you can imagine the panic. So in fact, that was one of the reasons that they were not too keen on, thinking it was drug. However, when we kept pushing, myself and my colleague, Professor Obidike, we kept pushing the government that it must be done, the toxicology must be done. So they now got help from the WHO, who now carried out, collected the samples from us and sent for analysis. Unfortunately, before the reports came, most of those children had died. So the reports actually came late because the test was done late.
Thank you very much. We appreciate you, Dr. Moneke, for what you do and what you did in the Gambia. At least from our country, you were able to do something great in another country. Thank you so much. I think there's another question. I think the last question is, if you report by the MEDSAFETY app, does NAFDAC deploy persons for physical investigation of the reports?
Yes, only when it is a very serious reaction.
Okay. Okay, only when it's a very serious reaction. I think that is all, folks. I think we have exhausted what we have on the chat box. Please remember, look at the chat box. We have posts here on who to contact, where to send emails, and how to reach the reporting platform on the NAFDAC website. So please, let's do well to use this information very well. I think with this, I should say we have come to a very successful end of this program. We have listened keenly. We have participated as much as we can, and we still have our roles to play as pediatricians and physicians to ensure routine ADR surveillance. We should also try to access this MEDSAFETY app and use it. Use it in ward rounds, use it in the clinics, because all we do is for our patients' safety. We have said it has to be beneficent and non-maleficent. So when we give medications, we hope for the best for our patients. And when they mistakenly take the wrong ones and the reports, we should be very watchful. So I want to thank our erudite speakers for your beautiful presentation. You have done so well. I'm going to hand over to our dear President, and she will wrap up this with her remarks before we close. Thank you so much. Madam President, ma.
Thank you very much, Madam Moderator. I want to, on behalf of Pediatric Association of Nigeria, extend our sincere appreciation to everyone who has contributed to the success of this webinar. The third presentation has driven home the point clearly that pharmacovigilance is everybody's business. Having more than 60 children die
It's terrible
because of some syrup that they were given is a tragedy. And I'm sure all of us in the room, we just can't get over it. Thank you, Dr. Moneke, for that presentation. Our deep gratitude goes to our colleagues from NAFDAC who have provided us with a clear, practical, and insightful guidance on pharmacovigilance, ADR and AEFI reporting, and effective use of the MEDSAFETY app. Your expertise continues to strengthen our collective commitment to safer healthcare delivery for children across Nigeria. To our esteemed moderator, thank you for steering the session professionally. To all the participants, your active engagement through your questions, comments, and willingness to learn has enriched the conversation. And as pediatricians and child health practitioners, the knowledge we have gained today empowers us to play a stronger role in monitoring medication and vaccine safety. In fact, when the announcement for this webinar, I actually sent it to my daughter. One of the strong conversations we have together is her not being sure that there is enough reporting about adverse reactions when it comes to drugs and vaccines. So I was happy to send this to her to show her what we're doing and how we are getting everybody involved in the process. So let's translate today's insights into practice by improving our reporting culture, promoting awareness among colleagues, and ensuring that every adverse event is documented using the appropriate tools. I want to appreciate our senior colleagues who were in the room. I thank Professor Olowu, a past president of PAN. Thank you, sir, for being there all through. Dr. Dorothy Sangbedo was also in the room at some point. Thank you, another past president. Now, this would be the last PAN webinar under my leadership as PAN president. And so it is with a deep sense of gratitude, humility, and fulfillment that I offer these final words of appreciation to you all on behalf of the current PAN Executive Council of 2024 to 2026. God bless you all. Many of us have participated, attending regularly all the webinars. We are very grateful. We look forward, however, to seeing you at our conference in Abeokuta and our next webinar in 2026. Thank you very much and have a wonderful evening.
Thank you so much, Ma. Bye, everyone. Thank you.